Welcome back, everybody. It's the Daily Dizzle for Monday, August 8th, 2011. Tommy Dizzlemits here, as always. Hopefully you guys had an enjoyable weekend, besides the fact that our credit rating is now down. But, fuck the government. Today we're going to run down the weekend box office and some other news in the world of TV and movies. So let's jump right in with the weekend box office. Rise of the Planet of the Apes ended up taking the #1 spot with about $54 million for the weekend. After its opening day, it was originally projected to have around the high 40 million range. But shows what good word of mouth can do, even if it's a prequel, which people are like, oh, that's a cheap cash tie-in because it's just taking advantage of the fact that we know what happened later in the story. Let's see if there's people who will shell out to see the stuff that's not important detail. But ended up making a lot of money, not quite as much as the Planet of the Apes remake from years ago, but considering that left a bad taste in everyone's mouth, very, very good results for the weekend, especially having the Saturday bump up. Unfortunately, the same positive reaction could not grace the other new release for the weekend. The Change Up, featuring Ryan Reynolds and Jason Bateman, ended up opening in #4 with only $13.5 million. That's only a quarter of its budget, so it's going to be lucky if it can make some coin by the time it's out of theaters. And really, even if it's on DVD, it might make a little bit of money, but not going to be a huge success story, at least not like the other R-rated comedies that have all almost crossed $100 million this summer. It's going to be interesting to see how the other comedies coming out this month also fare, but we'll get to that a little bit later. Meanwhile, last weekend's holdovers with the battle between the Smurfs and Cowboys and Aliens. Smurfs pulled ahead for real this time. This weekend they made an estimated $21 million for the #2 slot. Meanwhile, Cowboys and Aliens made just under $16 million and had to settle for #3. Rounding out the top 5, the first Avenger, Captain America, ended up taking in an extra $13 million. Pretty much the story on that is, even though that and Thor weren't necessarily the biggest runaway successes for superheroes, right now they are going to be the biggest success stories of the summer, and they're at least doing consistent business, showing that, hey, alright, take one Avenger in this movie, one Avenger in another, you're going to do consistent business across the board. What's going to happen when you throw them all together in one movie? Hopefully big box office results next year. Moving on to other movie news, though, the next couple weeks there are still some R-rated comedies left to grace us for the summer. 30 minutes or less, starring Jesse Eisenberg and Aziz Ansari. It's pretty much based almost off of a case you might have seen on America's Most Wanted with Brian Wells, the pizza delivery guy who ended up getting a bomb strapped to his neck, and it went off while the police were recording it because they didn't know what the fuck to do. Now friends and family of the deceased Wells are taking their aim at 30 minutes or less, pretty much being like, this is something that really happened to Brian, and now you guys are making a movie out of it and making jokes, and this is horrible, blah, 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 blah. They're not mentioning any of the details of, oh yeah, Brian Wells was involved in the plot, just didn't think they were going to put an actual bomb on him. But if it wasn't a real bomb, he would have ended up making off with a little bit of money. So, hey, if he was stupid enough to have trusted whatever other criminals were there, guess what? It's fair game for a movie that's a comedy to be written about it. Sorry. Before we wrap up today's Daily Dizzle, let's get to a little bit of TV news. First off, 2.5 Men will be returning soon, obviously without Charlie Sheen. They're going to be giving his character the most epic write-off ever, considering I don't think a comedy before has used meat explosion as the description to what happened to the main character. So it's going to be very fun to see that episode when it returns. Doesn't mean it's necessarily going to be a good season. You do have Ashton Kutcher, who's a big megastar, replacing Charlie Sheen. You can argue which one's the bigger star, but the fact is Ashton Kutcher is a little less crazy than Charlie Sheen is. Doesn't mean that the audience is going to stick around, though. If Ashton Kutcher's character doesn't make sense on the show, or if he doesn't do a good job, this could be the last season for 2.5 Men. Unfortunately, there is another epically popular television show from the last decade that is, in fact, on its last leg, and that would be Desperate Housewives. With the start of the 8th season just a few short weeks away, it was better time than ever for executives to announce that it will be the final season, rather than try and extend it a couple more seasons and have some weak-ass stories on the way out. They want to have it go out near its peak. It's not nearly at its ratings peak anymore, but it still drives in a sizable audience every Sunday night. And while it's been no secret that ABC has thought more consciously about when to end the series over the last 2 or 3 years since the ratings started to dip, this is just their way of kind of drumming up more interest for it. There might be a sizable audience who has stopped watching Desperate Housewives, which is a fact considering the ratings have gone down. But this is ABC's way of reminding them, hey, remember that show you used to watch all the time on Sunday nights? You only got 1 more year to watch it, bitches. So Congrats, ABC. Even when things aren't going your way, you can spin them into a positive and make them go the way you want them. So, yeah, that's all the time we've got for today's Daily Dizzle. But thanks for joining us here as always. Be sure to check back here tomorrow where we'll have the latest movie and TV news and whatever other entertaining shit we have to talk about. So, the Daily Dizzle, I'm Tommy Dizzlemits. We look forward to seeing you back here for Tuesday.